Welcome back to another episode of Two Dimes and a Token. I am one of your hosts, Brucknasty. On this particular episode, I had to do a solo mission. We sat down, we did a virtual podcast with Mr. Sal Capaccio. He is a lead anchor for radio station for WGR 550. And he is actually the beat reporter for the Buffalo Bills. So he is the guy that's on the sideline. He's in the media room. He's doing the one-on-ones with the players. He gets invited onto different shows. He's been on the Pat McAfee show. Just an all-around amazing guy. He's very charismatic. And to be honest, he had such an amazing story to tell. It was truly off the charts. We got 15, 20 minutes into this podcast, and I was almost speechless. Just how this guy took the biggest risk that he possibly could, figured out how to make it work to get a dream job working in and around the Buffalo Bills. And in the middle of the podcast, starting center for the Buffalo Bills makes an appearance. Really cool. He gives us a quick little tour of the media room and where he's at. And he was so wonderful to be able to take the time to walk us through this and take the time to sit down with us and do the podcast in general. So, two things that we got to jump over real quick. Remember, this episode is coming out in the middle of June. So make sure you guys go into the merch stores. We are still donating 100% of our profits from our merchandise stores over to the Tampa Bay Heart Walk, running that all the way through June 30th. So get in there, get your merch, help us progress toward a really good donation to a great initiative. The second thing that we want to talk about is make sure we want to have a big initiative when it comes to the spice of the week. All right. Every single episode. I know you guys have something you want to talk about each week. We here at Two Dimes and a Token, we want to hear it. Go into the comments on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys listen or watch. Go into the comments section. Even if you got to pose a question, right? Tell us what your spice of the week is. We want to know what it is. We want to talk to you about it. We want to share in those joys that you have. And even if you had a rough week and you're just trying to find that little positive, reach out, connect to us, connect to your community. That's what we created this segment for, and we want you guys to be a part of it. So come on in, make sure you write your comments, get your spice of the weekend, all right? So without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Coach Sal. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Coach, thank you so much for coming on. Again, we appreciate it so much, man. And like we were just diving into, you said you are in Buffalo Stadium, and just gave us a little bit of a preview. We had a technical difficulty getting started, thanks to your boy Bruck here, but yeah, but showed us you're in the media room right now, where everybody goes up. And you said they were doing stuff for the draft, and they feed you real well.
Yeah, well, listen, this is the Bills media room where I'm sitting here now. It's in Orchard Park, New York, just outside Buffalo. When you told me you were willing to come up to Buffalo, it really meant a lot to me, so I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much. It's pretty cool. We can do this wherever we are around the world or around the country, but I'm in the Bills media room. This is where basically all the magic happens, where the players come up and talk to us before practice. This isn't in the stadium. The stadium's actually across the street right now. In fact, if you want, I can kind of give you a little tour here of what's going to happen.
That would be amazing.
So I'm in the Bills media room. This is the risers. And if you're on camera, like a TV person, this is what you look at. Right? And you can zoom in and see like Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, whoever's talking. You know, we got TVs up there. Yeah, they put food out for us during like the draft and stuff like that. I walk over to this. This is pretty cool. Ready? Here's the door. Watch this. Guess what's outside?
Look at that.
There's the stadium.
That's fantastic. We should switch roles for like a day.
Right there.
What do you think about that? Just I'll go there and just pretend like
there's
I know
the
what I'm
stadium,
doing.
right? I mean, I'm very lucky when we even have like, hold on, I walked out here to do that, and I'm talking to you right now, and literally we have there's the president of the team. Somebody's coming in because they got video people out there. Ooh, I wonder who's coming in. Somebody's in a big limo. Look at this.
There you go.
I wonder who this is live on the air here. Let's see what we got here. Hold on, there's big cameras. Let's do this for a second. We're doing this live.
We are doing this live.
I don't know who's coming up. This could be Leonard Floyd. They just signed Leonard Floyd today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they just signed Leonard Floyd, the pass rusher from the Rams.
Yeah.
So
that's
trying to see.
High probability then.
There's a chauffeur getting people out of the limo. How about this? And this is like live right in your show.
Dude, this is fantastic. See, we're getting to
who that
experience
is
your
coming out
life
of the,
firsthand right now.
Limo. Not really sure. Actually, I think what that is, believe it or not, I think it's looks like maybe something for a charitable foundation, or they got someone coming out of there that's like a couple of kids coming out. So pretty cool.
Very
so they
cool.
do a lot of stuff like that here at the stadium. Anyway, so there you go. That's what you have it there. Sorry about the noise there.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, so I'm here today, and I'm at the media room, and what's going to happen is there's a practice facility right outside the media room. It's not the stadium itself.
Yeah.
And they have a practice indoor facility. They have a practice outdoor facility right outside that. And today we have OTAs. That's, the workouts they have that are voluntary. The players don't have to be here, but you always pretty much have everybody here if you guys aren't. Yeah. And we're going to hear from one of the coaches today like we do before practice all the time. Then we'll go out, we'll watch practice for a couple hours. Then we'll go and we'll interview all the players. And like you said, can we switch roles? It is a great job. I mean, I get to talk about and watch football for a living, which is cool.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So kind of backing it up a little bit, you and I met when I was a wee little dude in high school, and you were my head coach on my JV team. And I remember, I think the next year after I had taken the next step up, you had left and you moved to Buffalo. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I grew up here. I'm from Buffalo. I grew up in Buffalo, and I've always been somebody who, I think, people even here don't realize, I was in this business in radio and TV before I was a teacher, before I was a coach. I left the business. There is a small radio station where you went to high school, WENG in Englewood, Florida, on River Road. That was my first job in radio. And I was working there, and I was doing games, and I was actually doing Lemon Bay high school football games.
Really?
And on the radio. And then basically what happened was, the head coach, Mike Messina at the time, who you played for, came to me and said, hey, you want to join my staff? Because I was coaching Pop Warner. I was coaching Little League. It was really cool. And I didn't have any kids on the team. And we had developed a relationship. And I said, sure. And I really enjoyed it. So about after one spring of football, I really loved it and thought maybe I wanted to be a college football coach. And the way to go about that was to become a teacher first, get ingrained, become a high school coach and teacher. So that's really where my journey started as a coach and as a teacher. I guess went back to University of South Florida, got certified to teach. I left radio for a while. That's where I met my wife at USF. We've been married 20 years now. She was getting her master's in clinical psychology and substance abuse at USF. And, we married in 2003, and I was a teacher and coach at Lemon Bay until like 2010. But, I always wanted to get back into radio, and I always wanted to do it in Buffalo. And there was always something pulling at me to do it. So basically that's what led me back here. And I made some connections and decided to make the leap of faith to come back to Buffalo back in 2011.
That's amazing, man. That's an awesome journey. So when you made the leap, right, did you have anything lined up when you first said, let's go back, or?
So what happened was, in 2007, what year did you graduate?
2007.
There you go. So there you go. 2007, I applied for a job here in Buffalo for someone that they had made a change and someone was fired or whatever on the radio. So I applied, and that was right, Mike, when podcasting started.
Yeah. And
no one knew what podcasting was. And right at that time, I wanted to get back into radio. So I saw this thing on the online called mysportsradio.com. It was like this for, how you have today, you have all these different podcast platforms and everybody's a part of these different, national ones, Believe podcast or Locked On podcast. This was called mysportsradio.com. Nobody had ever heard of podcasting. What's this kind of thing?
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And this guy's out in California. He's like, hey, I get this podcast network. It's the new way people are listening to things. And you can do a show on the Bills. I'm like, sure. So I started doing it. And that's how I kind of kept my reps and kept me kind of talking about the Bills and involved in everything. And it's easy with the internet back then, even to kind of stay on top of everything going on here in Buffalo. So I did this podcast and I'm like, okay, well, I'm getting my reps here. And then this job opens up. I apply for it. I send the guy some shows and things like that. Yeah. And he's like, look, you probably have no shot for this job. You're not even in radio right now, but maybe I'll give you a shot. And he actually wound up a couple of weeks later saying, okay, I'm going to have you drive to Tampa and do a show from there remotely to Buffalo. So I literally drove to Tampa. I'm at this studio, the country station up in Tampa. I'm in this studio, this little cubicle. All I have in front of me is AOL Instant Messenger to talk back to the producer in Buffalo. And I'm doing a show live in Buffalo, but nobody knows I'm in Tampa. And I remember the show I did. It was Halloween night 2007. And the topic of the show I did was J.P. Lossman versus Trent Edwards and who should be the quarterback in Buffalo. That was the topic of the show.
That's a throwback right there.
So it's great. It's amazing, right? So I'm doing this show, and I get out of the show, and the program director from Buffalo calls me. And he says, "Oh my God, that was amazing. Like, you were really energetic. We loved it. I want you to do another show." So I literally go back up the next week. And I remember this one was literally election night, 2007. And it wasn't really like, or maybe it was in 2008, whatever. It wasn't a big election, but it was election night. Because I remember saying to people, hey, go out and vote and do all that kind of thing. Right. So I do these shows. He calls me back about 2 weeks later. And he's like, "Look, I love you. You're great. Like, you're actually the perfect person for this job, but I can't hire you." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you have a full-time job down there. You're teaching, you're coaching, you're doing everything. And I'm only looking for a part-time guy. And I can't bring you up to Buffalo for a part-time job. That wouldn't be fair of you. It wouldn't be fair of me to do that." And he said, and I hired somebody. And the guy he hired was actually at the time the local CBS sports director on television. And he said, "Hey, this guy's going to do TV, and then he's going to do radio at night. And we have this relationship with CBS. We can have this crossover, all that kind of thing. It helps me out. And he doesn't have to rely on this job." Well, I got really mad, and I said, "Well, first of all, I'm an adult." I said, "If you think I'm the best person for the job, you should tell me that and tell me what the risks are, and I can make that decision for me. You shouldn't make that decision for me." That's what I told him.
Yeah.
And he was, okay. He said, "All right, that's fine." He says, "I'll tell you what then." He says, "You ever want to come to Buffalo and move up here, back to your hometown? You can do it." He said, "I'll hire you, but you're going to make," he says, "you make bad money for your minimum wage, essentially." He says, "For part-time hours, and you're going to start back at the bottom." And I'm in my 30s now, right? I'm like, how do I do that? I'm coaching, I'm teaching, I'm playing golf twice a week, enjoying my summers in Florida. Right? My wife and I were enjoying our lives. I'm like, how does somebody make the decision to go to Buffalo, New York to start over in radio in their 30s for minimum wage and part-time hours? I'm like, I can't really do that. So I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. But in the meantime, what happened was, I tell you, Mike, I went back and I bawled. I cried because this was my dream job, to be a host on WGR in Buffalo. I grew up wanting to do that, right? And I bawled. I'm like, I had my dream job. It was right there, and this guy won't give it to me, and he says I'm great at it. So I sent him a letter, and I wrote him a handwritten letter, and I said, "Thank you for the opportunity to live my dream, but I'm going to be honest, you made a mistake and should have hired me." Right? So he calls me back. He's like, "I love it, man. I love it." I'm telling you, he's like, he's like, stay in contact and all that kind of stuff. So a couple of years go by, and I just stayed in contact. And what happened was in 2009, I got a really big break. I got information in March of that year that the Bills were signing Terrell Owens, T.O.
Yep.
And here I am, this guy on the podcast internet that people are like, "Oh, who's this guy in his basement doing a podcast?" Back then, that's what people thought about people doing this kind of thing.
I know,
now it's
man.
like the biggest industry out there, right?
Yeah.
But back then, people are like, "Oh yeah, somebody's in mom's basement. Like, who's this guy?" So I had to take a chance, and I'm like, I'm going to throw this out there and say I have information the Bills are signing Terrell Owens, and if they don't sign him, I'm ruined. I'm done. And people are going to be like, "Okay, you're just making stuff up, throwing it against the wall." If it happens, it's going to be the biggest break ever. But if I don't do it and it happens, I'm going to be totally regretting it the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I threw it out there, and at the time, Twitter was starting. I had my own little website, and I put it out there, and people are like, "Oh, whatever. You're just looking for clicks." Sure enough, it happens.
Yes.
And I was the first person in the country to break the story that the Bills were signing Terrell Owens.
That's amazing.
And I was just this guy who had some information in Florida who was doing a Bills podcast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, national people were calling me, ringing off the hook. I'm getting Sirius XM Radio, Pro Football Talk, NBC, ESPN. They're all crediting me. They're calling me. I'm going on these stations, and my profile starts to build. Now, people in Buffalo are like, "Okay, this guy, like, he knows his stuff."
Yeah.
So now the program director in WGR I talked to, he's like, "Yeah, I always told you want to come back to Buffalo." He says, "I don't have a job for you, but I'll hire you. I'll, bring you up here and whatever." So at the same time, my wife, she was working for, she was substance abuse. She had switched careers for a little while. She wanted to go back into substance abuse. And she's from Germany. And we came up here, and she ran the Buffalo Half Marathon in May. And she said to me, and by running the city, like, this is crazy, by running the city in the half marathon, 13 miles, she goes, "This is a great city. I could live here."
Yeah.
And she says, "If you really want to ever go back, the weather's like Germany. I could handle the winters. It's not a big deal."
Yeah.
And then the funniest thing, she goes, people drink and do drugs everywhere. I'm sure I could find a job in Buffalo. Right? I mean,
that's great.
Right. So I'm like, yeah, sure. So I stayed in contact with Andy Roth was his name. He's the program director at WGR. And I went to, if you remember our principal at the time, the guy I worked for, Dan Jeffers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he was the principal at Lemon Bay. And I went to Dan Jeffers and I said, look, I think I want to go back into radio and leave. And I'm going to move up to Buffalo. And he said, look, this is great. I support you, but understand that if you leave, probably can't hire you back. There's no job for you here. So like, you got to make this commitment if you're going to do it, and just understand this. I don't want to lie to you. And yep. Okay. I said, that's fine. So we did it. We decided. I called Andy and I said, you told me if I wanted to come up, you would hire me. I know minimum wage, part-time hours, stuff like that. And he said, hey, you want to do it? Come on up. I got a spot for you, whatever. So I literally commit to doing it. My wife moves up here a month before I do. She stays with friends as she starts a new job. She's like making really good money, has to take a really big pay cut. I'm doing what I'm doing down there. We're both making good money together. Summer's off. I'm going to come up here part-time, minimum wage, radio, age of 37. Crazy, right?
Wow.
Craziest part of the story, if it hasn't gotten any crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy enough. I'm sitting in my house. All furniture's basically gone. I'm ready to move to Buffalo about 2 weeks later. I'm finishing out. I'm teaching for like a month at Lemon Bay before I move up. Everybody knows. A buddy of mine calls me and goes, hey, who's the guy you're working for in Buffalo? I said, his name is Andy Roth. He goes, well, I just read online that he's leaving to go to Cleveland like at the end of the week, and he's not going to be working in Buffalo anymore. I'm like, what? I'm freaking out.
Oh my God.
All right. I'm about to sell my car, my convertible at CarMax that day. I'm like, okay, I'm like literally, I mean, I'm all in, baby. So I call him and I'm freaking out and he goes, don't worry. They know you're coming. I won't be here. You won't be working for me. But when you get here, it's all about you. Whatever you can do, you work your way in, build relationships. And I'm freaking out. So now I'm trying to find other places up here I can start to build relationships. I'm calling TV people I know, and I'm getting nibbles. Okay, yeah, you want to come up? We'll put you on here, put you on there. We could use somebody here, play-by-play, high school, college, whatever, things like that.
Yeah.
So I came up, and he wasn't here. And I'll tell you, Mike, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because if Andy had stayed, I would have started way at the bottom and had to really work my way. But what happened was, because Andy left, the people that were still at WGR and the station I worked for are like, hey, this guy, Andy hired him. He's really good. We need people. They started putting me right on all the shifts and on-air shows and filling in. And I really kind of advanced pretty quickly because of that. And then we hired a new program director, and he comes in. He's like, yeah, I really like this Sal guy. He's willing to do anything I ask. In the meantime, to make money, what I did was I substitute taught for $100 a day around the area. That's what I did. Right. And that's how I was making money. And at the time I came up, we didn't have the Bills rights. We were not the flagship station. We didn't carry the Buffalo Bills. They were on a different company, different station. But as luck would have it, 6 months later, that company loses the contract. We get it. And I'm right there. And they're like, we're putting Sal on some of the Bills stuff that we're doing. And that's how I kind of rose up and got more opportunities. I started getting on the game broadcast. Then I became the sideline reporter. Then I became the beat reporter, then a host. And basically that's where I am today. And in the meantime, my wife now, I would say she's like one step below a VP of a company here.
Wow.
She's in mid-level management of a substance abuse company here, a big company called Horizon. She loves her job. We own a house in the city, have a son. It's the best decision. And it was the scariest thing that's ever happened, but the best thing that's ever happened.
That is absolutely amazing, Coach. Like I couldn't imagine that. Like most people look at a life-changing decision like you're going to change a job, right? And it's like, oh, what am I leaving and I'm going here? You're talking about years culminating in 25 different risks, and then you finally get the opportunity. You're like, all right, we're going to make it happen. And then all of a sudden it feels like the floor just fell out on you, and you're like, let's just go. We're going to go 100 miles an hour and figure it out. That's amazing, man. That's an amazing story, dude. You got me jacked up first thing in the morning.
Well, I think it's a great story for anyone who wants to take risks and wants to bet on themselves, and it has to understand there are risks, a lot of them, but if you bet on yourself and you work hard, then things will work out. And I think it's something I really implore to a lot of kids who want to get in this business, because it's not just about this business. I get asked to do a lot of things. I go to schools. I speak to kids who want to go into broadcasting. What's your job like? You're with an NFL team. And that's cool. And I tell them all about it. But I also tell them this story, what I just told you, because to me, that's more important to know that I was 37 years old when I decided to go after my dream.
Yeah.
I mean, really, honestly, when you think about it, that's what happened. And that's how I got here. And now I'm 50 and living it.
There you go, man. That's so fantastic, dude. And honestly, I didn't know any of that. So I'm like hearing this for the first time. Like it's inspiring. It's motivating. It's unbelievable, man. Congrats to where you are and all your success, dude. So now you pretty much you landed the dream job. You've got everything. Like, what is the coolest experience that you have on a normal daily basis? Say when you're in the in season, right? Not in the off season. Like, what is that day in the life like for you?
So I have several different jobs. I work for Odyssey. It's a radio station. It's a radio company. We are the second largest radio company in America. They own over 240 stations, I believe, like WFAN in New York, WIP in Philadelphia, WEEI in Boston, some of the bigger sports stations. And of course us, WGR in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I don't work for the Buffalo Bills, but we do have a professional relationship and partnership with them. We're the flagship station. We're the station that carries all of their games. So we have a lot of different rights that a lot of places don't, obviously, to be able to do things and access. So within that framework, our station carries the games. We also have the ability to staff like who's the play-by-play and the color commentator and the sideline reporter, and that's me.
Yeah.
So that's part of my job, and I'll get to that in a second. But in the meantime, I'm also the beat reporter for the team. So I cover the team on a daily basis. I'm literally here. No matter what the team does, I do it. I'm with them. I basically go to practice. I talk to players. I write stories. If there's a roster move made, those kinds of things. That's my daily job. And then every day, Monday through Friday, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., I host a radio show. So a lot of times there might be a conflict between what the team's doing and the radio show, but I have a co-host. So I might just have to be like today. I'll be at practice from 11 to 12, 11:30 to 12, while my co-host hosts the show. There's nothing we can do about it, but I can go live with him from down here. We can do a lot of different things. So there's a lot of ways to massage it. So there's a lot of different things that kind of go into the daily routine. But I would say the coolest thing that you asked in season, I mean, I get to be on an NFL sideline every Sunday. This is my 10th year as the sideline reporter, right? So, you think about it, not every team has an NFL sideline, has a radio sideline reporter. But even if they did, there'd only be 32 of these jobs in the world.
Yes.
And I get to do one of them, and I get to be there. And me, I mean, from knowing me, how you know me, I mean, it's in my blood. It's in my DNA. I love being out there. Love kind of the competition, the adrenaline flowing. So being on the field for an NFL game, there's nothing like it. And I really do, Mike. I tell you, this is a true story. What I do is, and I've been doing this pretty much since the very beginning. When the national anthem's going and I'm standing at attention on the field, if you watch me, you'll see I do this. I do like this and I do a 360. And I look at the crowd and I look up and I see all the people, 80,000 people, 60,000 people. And I say to myself, I'm in the NFL. This is the coolest thing in the world, because I never want to take for granted the opportunity that I have to be in that position.
That's amazing. That's got to be such an adrenaline rush in all respects, man. Because like I played in college. I played in a low level in college, and just having that experience is pretty unique in general. Let alone sitting in a stadium with 70,000, 80,000 people, and you're right there on the sideline with the players, with the adrenaline running. And it's when you have that in your blood, I agree with you 100%. It's hard to not, that doesn't come out. You know what I mean? You're just like, man, sometimes I want to dive in there, but
I know.
That's amazing.
I know,
man.
It's crazy, right? And if I cover other sports. I've covered football in different capacities, being in a press box.
Yeah.
And a press box it's kind of stale, right? Because you're just doing your job, which is fine. That's what you have to do. And you're up there, and in our press box here at the stadium, it's enclosed, so you don't even hear anything happening. It's so like 70,000 people screaming, you can hardly hear it if you're in the press box. I'm on the field and I'm involved in everything, and the fans are right on top of you, and it's crazy, and you're enjoying it. And there's been some crazy stories down there. I've twice now been involved, like, because we're so close, like the field to the wall is so close. Twice now I've been involved in like fights that have happened on the sidelines with players, and I have to get out of there. And it's crazy. I mean, like Shaq Lawson and Leonard Fournette went at it one year when the Bills played the Jags. And then last year, Josh gets knocked out of bounds in the Dolphins, and there's this big melee.
Yeah.
And I literally went up, and I'm the one helping Josh up to get out of there because people are trying to get everybody away from everything. It was crazy.
That's fantastic, man. That's awesome. So have you come across, now, obviously, like you said, you grew up a Bills fan. So have you come across anybody that has left you a little bit starstruck, where you're kind of like, oh my God, that's him?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, not anymore, but I think that, like, I still get to, like, there's things like this. Like, this is what's crazy to me. Like, I grew up, Thurman Thomas is, like, one of my heroes, right? Thurman was amazing. He was the greatest running back ever, and to me, and, like, he's watching him go to Super Bowls and the things that he did, and I'm growing up and watching him in this stadium as a fan. And like literally we're like really good friends now. And he'll text me randomly, like, what do you think about the signing today? And I'm talking to him. Like, those are the kinds of things that I go, I cannot believe this in my life that I get to do this stuff. Right. And these people, and I hang out with them and be able to have these relationships with them. I think that's the part of it that's like, when you say like starstruck, and I pinch myself and like, come on, that's Thurman Thomas. Like, this guy, I'm wearing his jersey when I'm a kid, and here I am, and and he's coming to my son's Little League game, right? I mean, it's crazy.
That's amazing. That's such a cool story, man. So, switching tactics, and how did you feel? Obviously, you work in and around that area, but like you said, you've been a huge fan. So, how did you feel about the season for the Buffalo Bills last year, as far as culmination all the way to the ending?
Yeah, I mean, look, it started off. They were the Super Bowl favorites last year, and this still really started off like that. Beating the Rams, beating the Titans really badly on Monday Night Football, week number 2, and everything was really humming along. And unfortunately, then some injuries happened, and that's part of the game, the attrition of the game that happens. And this has been one of the most healthiest teams over the last several years, which is why they've been able to maintain that level on top of the roster they have. But last year, they started to have some injuries. And they were without Tre'Davious White for quite a while. And then they had a little bump in the road, middle of the season, and Josh gets hurt and hurts the elbow. But I think, it's funny. I'm looking over. I'm sorry. I see Mitch Morris, our center. He's standing right here, right? Mitch Morris. So.
Yeah. Tell him if he wants to say hi.
Maybe I'll have Mitch say hi to you. I know, right? I know. I'm doing it. Hold on. Let me see if I can. I know. We have a couple people in the media room working, so we got one of our photographers here, and he's showing a couple pictures. Let me see if hey, Mitch, I'm doing a podcast with a former lineman of mine in high school. He wants to say hi. Look, you kind of guys got to look like this. Is Mike. Say hi to Mike. He's doing his own podcast. He's starting it. This is Mitch Morris, center of the Buffalo Bills.
What's up, man? How are you doing?
What's up? He's got a great. I know. Isn't that cool? Did you ever think about doing a podcast in the media?
That's too many podcasts.
All right. And Mitch Morris right there. There you go.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it. I know. So this is what happens, right? And that's why I love being here too. We have this relationship with these guys. They walk in and out. Like, I don't think it's not New York or Chicago or LA, right? Buffalo, we're a smaller market. These guys go out to dinner. They don't have to be bothered like a lot of places where you go and, they're getting hounded and things like that. Sure. There are football players and people love them and they watch them every day, and the starstruck part of it can come into play. But I think that living in Buffalo, I think is a really cool part of it, that we have this interpersonal relationship with all of these people, that we interact with here. As the season went on last year though, Mike, let's rewind and go back, and I mean, not to, dive too deep, but it was a really tough year here in Buffalo. It started just over a year ago in May. We had the racist mass shooting at our local Tops. It was less than a mile and a half from my own house, in Buffalo, in the city. It was really trying in our community. And this team really helped kind of get us through that with their support. And, the owners here, the Terry and Kim Pagula, they also own the Buffalo Sabres hockey team and the Buffalo Bandits lacrosse team. And all of those came together. We call it One Buffalo here, where we're all one unit, one team. And, they were helping us get through that. And then Kim, the owner of the team, she had a horrible medical event in June, and we haven't heard from Kim. She's still on the road to recovery. It's been a year now. That was a really trying experience for everybody here to go through all of that. And then we get into November. We had the snowstorm that got the game moved. Remember the one week that we were supposed to play home against Cleveland, I had to move it to Detroit. That was tough. And then we had the game in Chicago Christmas weekend, and there was a really, really one of the worst snowstorms ever here in Buffalo. And we couldn't get back home. We had to stay in Chicago, and I didn't get home Christmas morning. I couldn't be home Christmas Eve. The game was 24th. We're there. We had to go back to the hotel. We had to stay there, get back. And 40 something people died here in Buffalo. People were freezing to death in their cars. Yeah. I mean, it was a horrible thing. A week later, there was this fire that killed, I think, 5 or 6 children in the city. And then we had the Damar Hamlin situation, which you know about, that happened in Cincinnati. And here's a guy that, died on the football field and came back. And everything that happened was just, I think it was so trying for this team that at the end of the year, to be honest with you, Mike, I just think they ran out of gas. I really do. Yeah. I just don't think they had enough left in the tank. And I think they were so emotionally spent that, people look at what happened in that Cincinnati game and they didn't play their best football. But I think there were a lot of reasons why they didn't play their best football. And, you hope that you don't go through any of those things. But I give a lot of credit to the organization, the leadership of this organization, for even getting them to still win the division and to be in that position to playing in the playoffs and 2 rounds deep and beating the Miami Dolphins in the first round and still being there after all those things that happened.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%, man, because even at a smaller level, you still carry that local environment with you. There are people and your fans when they come to watch, like you carry that emotion of what happens in your little neighborhood with you, and especially, and that's why I give a lot of kudos to New Orleans when you remember they won a Super Bowl after a big catastrophe. They had that hurricane that happened, and they came back the next year and really, got it done. But like having all those things compound on, and I think some people don't connect it, but players really get connected to their cities. And when those things types of happen, like you said, it's a lot of emotions that run through, and people get really exhausted from that. So that's why
I think too, going back to, we're smaller, right? Again, we're not one of these really big cities where there's all these other things going on. Those things I think become a little more personal because when you're smaller and you have such a tight knit community, and obviously that's what happened here in Buffalo. So, I think we have the right leadership here to get us through those kinds of things, but there's only so much you can handle, and your bodies can handle, and your mental fortitude can handle. And I think that they tried their best to, rise up as much as they could at the end of the year. But, it was a little bit too much, especially against a good opponent. Give the credit, obviously, to the Bengals and, how good they are, what they did with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and everything. And against an opponent like that and the Chiefs where they are, I think it became too much that they couldn't overcome.
Yeah, no, I feel you 100%. So now going into the 2023 season, right? How do you feel the layout you have? Obviously, you have a lot of key players that have come back. You have a lot of guys that are coming up getting more experience. How do you feel the layout for the next season is going to go? And do you have any predictions for overall records?
I like to lean on Vegas a little bit. I think they have them at the 10.5. If I had to bet, I might say over, because I think this team should win about 11 games, and they could even go higher than that. But it is a very tough schedule this year. The crossover division is the NFC East, so they have to play the Eagles on the road. They also have to play the Chiefs on the road, the Bengals on the road. I mean, this is going to be a tough schedule this year. Look what the Jets are doing and the Dolphins are doing in the division. They got to play them twice each, and each team beat the Bills last year once. So it's going to be a tough go of it. They still have Josh Allen. They still have a great roster. I still think they're going to win the AFC East as I sit here and talk to you. But I think there's going to be some challenges along the way to get there. I think the biggest thing to remember, and again, going back to the health and the attrition part, is where this team is now health-wise, getting Micah Hyde back healthy after his neck surgery, getting Von Miller back. At some point, he's going to be healthy and playing again. He had the ACL injury last Thanksgiving. Getting Tre'Davious White now a full year and a half removed from that ACL injury he had a couple Thanksgivings ago. Jordan Poyer getting older, but now he doesn't have to have so much on his plate if Micah's with him, and he was in and out of the lineup. Gabe Davis had the ankle injury a lot last year that he was dealing with. So, and of course Josh with the UCL, right? The elbow. People didn't think he'd even play, and he came back the next week. So I think more than anything, they're healthy, and if they can stay healthy, they'll still be one of the best teams in the league, and they'll have a chance to still try and get that number one seed. That's the one thing that's eluded this team, is the number one seed, to get that bye in the first round. They get teams to come here in the playoffs, like Cincinnati did, and they beat the Bills. But if the Bills had that week off last year with the one seed, I think things could have been different. They could have reset themselves a little bit. So I do think that they'll still be in the mix for all of that, because when you have Josh Allen, you always have a chance to win a lot of games. And when you have Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott running your organization, it even ramps that up even more, because they've done such a great job building the roster.
Absolutely. So I'm going to hit you with one more football question. I'm going to veer back to your journey a little bit, but one of the big things that I saw for myself, but that I heard from a lot of critics and just some fans down here in Florida, right, was a consistency piece. Right, consistency. Last year, you'd see the Bills just go off for 2 games, score tons of points, play great defense, right? But then all of a sudden you get to Miami and you kind of you fumble one, and it seemed that was kind of the trend throughout that season too. What do you feel contributed to the inconsistency, and what do you feel that they have to do to overcome that?
That's a good question. I agree. I think there was some inconsistency last year. Now, even with the inconsistencies, by the end of the year, they were the number 2 scoring team in the league, but it just didn't feel right at times, right? It just didn't kind of seem like it was in sync at times, and they had little details they weren't buttoned up on. And I think that comes from having some of the injuries and different people playing. So, the reps and getting the same people in there. The Miami game was a great example. They were down to their 3rd string center, right? I mean, that matters. I mean, they get down to the red zone, they're down the goal line. They can't even go under center. They have to take shotgun snaps, because when does your 3rd string center actually take snaps and practice with the starting quarterback? It just doesn't happen. Right. So these are little things that kind of add up in a game, and you can't go under center. Now you got to go shotgun. It kind of eliminates a lot of the plays you can make, right? Little things like that. But I also think one of the things is, let's remember, Brian Daboll left last year to go to the New York Giants, right? And he's been so instrumental in building Josh and this offense and what they were. And Ken Dorsey is a first-year offensive coordinator. He did a really great job. But he's also, as a first-year offensive coordinator, learning a lot of new things every single week and how teams are attacking them and what their counter is to what the Bills are doing to them. So I think a lot of those parts were trying to fit in a little bit. And then you get to week number 9 or 10, and Josh has the injury, and that really limited their playbook. I think he just couldn't make all the throws he normally could make. And I think that really, kind of dialed them down. As far as the defense is concerned, I really think it was on the injuries. Tre'Davious White wasn't there until Thanksgiving of last year. Von Miller then gets hurt on Thanksgiving last year. Micah Hyde is out all year. You're missing Jordan for a few games. I think the injuries really, hurt them, and especially because they had to change their defense up after Von. They had to blitz more. They couldn't get as much pressure with the front four. So I think that really kind of, put them at a disadvantage of what they truly want to do. But I think, year 2 of Ken Dorsey, a healthy everybody, hopefully, you should get back to a little bit more of those consistencies, because that is something I think this team will address and focus on, to be a little bit more consistent on a week-to-week basis.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know I said I wasn't going to ask football. I still got one more popped in my head. When you're going, man, it gets me riled up about football again. So last one that I got for you. Do you have any set concrete prediction? Since you predicted T.O., baby, let's throw it out there, right? What is the overall record for the Buffalo Bills this year in 2023?
I don't know. I can't give that to you today. I gotta wait till my predictions come out in August. Again, like I said, I'll say right now, as I sit here, I think 11-6 sounds about right. I think they can go 12-5, somewhere in there. So I'll say 11.5 and 5.5. How about that? And then you give me a credit either way. No, I think that's probably about where I'd go. I think right now, as I sit here with the tough schedule they have, I'll give them credit. Let's say 12-5. I like what I've seen out of there's 17 games now, remember. I like what I've seen out of this group so far in OTAs and how they're working. So I'll give them that extra win to get them 12-5 and win the division.
There you go. So, and I'll piggyback on that, and then we'll move on. But I think you hit the nail on the head with the offense last year's, even with inconsistencies, right? And a first year offensive coordinator, number 2 in the league. If they put that together, I think that you really see an offense that you haven't seen before. Somebody that can kind of put up records or put up numbers in the record book a little bit for total offense, maybe total passing yards, the whole shebang. So I am very excited. I'm not a huge Bills fan. I'm pretty sure if you remember, I'm a very big Carolina Panther fan, which we're not going to dive into them today. But
no, that's okay. Hey, we love the Carolina Panthers here because we love Frank Reich here.
Yes.
Frank Reich's a Buffalo Bills legend, backup quarterback. So there's a lot of Bills fans in Carolina, actually. We call Charlotte Buffalo South here because so many people relocate from Buffalo to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
One of my good friends here actually just left the Bills organization to go to the Panthers. His name is Jeremy Kelly. Did a great job with the Alumni Association here. He's down there working for Carolina. We have a lot of connections. Frank comes back every year to do his Call to Courage Award here in Buffalo. I was supposed to be a part of that this year. I couldn't join him because I had other obligations, but that's all good, man. We don't mind the Carolina Panthers here, when they play each other, obviously.
I was very hurt a little bit when Sean McDermott left as our defensive coordinator and went over. I was like,
so many connections.
Come on, man. I knew Sean's
but I'll tell you what, as a Panthers fan, I'll tell you this, Mike, you're in good hands with the people there, Frank Reich, not only Frank Reich, but Dan Morgan, their assistant GM, really got to know him well here in Buffalo when he was the personnel director for the Buffalo Bills. I saw him at the owners' meetings in Arizona. What a great guy he really is, and he's doing a lot of good things down there. And you guys are in good hands with the people building that organization now.
The man, awesome. So veer a little bit back to your journey, which, as we already addressed, was absolutely amazing. Took some big risks. You're living your dream. You've been doing it for about 13 years now. We have a little bit of a motto on our podcast: bad decisions make great stories. Some people provide a bad decision that turns into a funny story. Some people have a tough or bad decision that all of a sudden turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to them. And a great example is everybody hears it like The Rock. The Rock never made it to the NFL, and it was the best thing that never happened, right? If you can think back, what would be that decision that was either bad or tough that got you where you are or turned out to be great?
I think that the tough one was the one I went through. The toughest one was really deciding the scariness of coming to Buffalo and, making that decision to do that. But I think, if I look outside and I don't do it as part of my job, I would have to say maybe, believe it or not, like property. So, for example, like my house in Florida. So I built my house in 2002. we wind up moving up here in 2011. And I actually wanted to sell my house because I'm like, okay, well, let's just sell the house then. We're not going to live there. My wife actually said, no. What if things don't work out and we need a place to live and come back to, right? Let's just rent it out. So for literally 10 years, we rented our house out down, and it was right across the street from the elementary school there, Ellie Anger Middle School, I should say, where you're familiar with in Rotunda.
Yeah.
Best decision we ever made, because by the time we got to 2021, 2022, we were able to sell the house. We made a lot more money out. We knew we were in Buffalo. It was okay. We could go do that. It wound up helping. I'm like, man, imagine if I would have sold that house back then, and I didn't make as much money as I could make now, and those kinds of things. And then on the flip side, here in Buffalo, we were here for a year. We were renting a place because we said, what if it doesn't work out? And we actually went to look for houses. And okay, where would you want to live? And we found a nice spot in the city we really liked. And my wife sees this house on the street. And she's like, oh, this is the house we're going to buy. And I'm like, are you nuts? That house, it's got this wrong with it, that wrong with it. She's like, no, we're going to fix it up. It's going to look real. I'm like, okay, I'm putting my faith in you. Best decision we ever made, Mike, because we got in right before the market went up. Yep. We put all this work into it, and now we're living in this great spot where a lot of people want to live. It's so close to everything. It's called the Elmwood Village here. We walk up, we can go to shops and stores and restaurants. We've been in the house now for 10, 11 years. It's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, that's one my wife, though. That was her decision. She's like, let's do this. I was not on board. I didn't like it. I'm not a handyman. I don't swing a hammer, man. Yeah. I talk on the radio. That's what I do, right? I'm like, you want to fix it up? Okay, we're hiring people to fix it up. That's fine. And we did it. And it was the best decision ever.
That's awesome. That's fantastic, man. So, what do you see for yourself? Obviously, you're in such a great spot, and it's regardless of money, regardless of this. Like, I can see it all over your face, man. You love what you're doing with a passion, and that's honestly inspiring to so many people. So, what do you have in the future as far as your ideals? Are you looking to stay where you are, or do you want to grow a little bit, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I get it all the time. I get two things a lot of times from people, which is, hey, do you ever want to go to another market or try to go to ESPN or Fox or whatever? And I say it like that. And I'm not trying to be funny or corny, but that's what people do in this business. Yeah. And when you rise a certain level, it's great. Like, I appear on these national shows. I'm on Pat McAfee, which is amazing, right? Yeah. To be on his show and to be the Bills guy they bring on. And I do these national spots and radio all around the country. And I would say, no, man, Buffalo's home. I love it here. We've built a home here. I love what I do. And, there's a safeness in it, of course, right? There's some risks you could take, but I don't need to take those risks anymore. I'm where I want to be. I grew up here, and I have a great job. We're raising our son here. So I don't want to do that. I think so from within that framework, there's always things you can adjust and think about you want to do. But as long as my radio station has the Buffalo Bills and we're the flagship station, I don't really have any reason to do anything else or be anywhere else, because I'm doing what I want to do. I'm on the radio broadcast for the team. I'm covering the team. I get to, travel with an NFL team on the plane and in the hotel and all that kind of stuff every single week. And those are the kinds of things that I really enjoy doing. But it's really more about the relationships and the people that I've met along the way that I don't really need to move on, so to speak. I think that there's always adjustments in what you can do. I mean, look, for working here for 10 years, I didn't have my own show. Now I have this own show 10 to 12, and it's been an adjustment, but those are the kinds of things that come along the way. So no, I don't think that I see myself doing anything necessarily drastically different. I think a lot of that is dictated by the business itself and where things go. And if I have to make adjustments, I will. Like, I just signed a new contract at my company, and I know what I like to do is I like to evaluate where we are. Do we have the Bills rights, things like that? If we were going to lose them, then what would that look like? Would I need to think about moving on to another station? But I love radio. It's the interpersonal part of it. People always ask me, don't you want to do TV? I do some TV a little bit. I'm like, heck no, man. I turn the radio. I can talk for 3 hours like you and I are doing right now, unfiltered, and it's pretty cool. And that's what I love to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. That's awesome. Wow. You got me jacked up for the whole day right now, bro. And that's one thing I got to tell you I've been out of football for a long time now, and that's that itch and that tick. It's always there. Football became a huge passion, especially when I was playing for you and getting into it at Lemon Bay and stuff. So it's what you're doing, man, and telling your story. I know people are going to listen to this, and they're going to absolutely love it. They're going to be inspired. And we're not going to keep you too much longer. We're going to wrap up with our last segment. So this is a segment. I don't know if I told you about it beforehand. So we call it the Spice of the Week. It's sponsored by Joe's Backyard Smokehouse here in Florida, right? So the Spice of the Week,
love it,
is you have to tell us what is something in the last week, because you know how everybody usually has sometimes an average week, sometimes a little bit below average week, or sometimes it's a great week. What is that one thing that happened in your week that made it phenomenal or took it from kind of rough to a little bit better? Everybody has that little thing, and it can be a little bit deep. Sometimes it can be just very small, whatever it may be. And, you know, just that little identifier. What would be your Spice of the Week?
All right. Could I go maybe 10 days ago? Does it have to be a week? Can
Absolutely.
I go a little while ago? Because this is really cool. So, because of the relationships we've made and the people that we know, I'm really fortunate to know a lot of people who have a lot of other connections in Buffalo, I guess, or do a lot of different things anyway. So there's a really cool art gallery right down the street from our house called the Albright Knox Art Gallery. And this is like it's like a world famous art gallery. And we actually know people who've donated over $40 million for the renovation to this art gallery, and they're actually doing all this stuff. But anyway, so we got invited to a really private kind of tour of what's going to happen here. They're going to be opening this thing, which is cool in itself, right? And I'm not like a super artsy person. I just think it's cool to do that.
Yeah.
But the coolest part was after this ceremony and after this tour, we literally had a private concert playing for us by the Goo Goo Dolls, who are from Buffalo.
Oh my gosh. Yo,
And
that's insane.
There was like 60 people there, and the Goo Goo Dolls played for us for like an
Wow.
hour.
So you're like, you're walking around like, man, this is unbelievable. Like,
Oh yeah.
that's fantastic. That's awesome.
I mean, it's crazy, right? And so those are the things we get to do. Like, my son was there, my wife was there. I'm looking right now. Like, I mean, your listeners here. I mean, this is literally like, I'll try to do this for you.
Oh, I saw this.
Right? I mean, come on. That's Johnny Resnick right there, and I'm like 10 feet from him.
Yes.
Pretty awesome, right?
That
So
is
we got to do that, and then
unbelievable.
we had a meet and greet with them, and you know, it was really cool just to kind of be able to do all that.
That is super cool, man. I remember I saw some of that on social media. I saw a clip, and I was like,
Yeah.
get the F out of here. Are you serious right now?
Yeah, there you go. And that was right afterwards. We got to
Oh, wow.
get there.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool.
That is so cool, man.
Yeah. And it's funny because like if maybe your listeners are like, okay, yeah, Goo Goo Dolls. No, when you grow up in Buffalo like that, they are from here. They're obviously world renowned, but when I was a kid, they were like playing at little bars and nightclubs around,
Yeah.
and now they are who they are, and they still live here, and they come back, and actually they live in LA. But you know, to be involved in all of that, to know the people who, you know, got us to be able to be with them for the art gallery thing, and then to go to that was just super cool and special.
That's amazing.
That was spicy.
Man. That is absolutely fantastic. Wow. So I'm not going to be able to match that one, brother. So you got me. I'm glad I went last. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
So I got to tell you, so that my actual Spice of the Week was actually having the opportunity. I was already excited for this for a week ago. I love the idea of reconnection, and the whole point of the reason we kind of started this was to connect people with different stories and you know, share the world to others, and maybe people that, you know, other people that they don't know about, or you know, just really kind of open it up a little bit. And knowing that I was going to have a chance to sit down with you and reconnect a little bit, and I'd always admired you kind of taking on this role that you've done, and I've watched you through social media kind of thing, and I just thought it was so cool that you made it. Everybody has this dream of getting there and doing this and doing that. You know, some people let life get in the way, or you just choose a different route because it seems a little bit more safe or whatever it may be. And I know your story had to be amazing. It was, and kind of the anticipation of getting ready to sit down with you and stuff. That was actually my Spice of the Week, being able to reconnect and just hearing the story too, because I'm going to carry this because I'm an emotional guy. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to carry this story for probably another 2 weeks, and I'm going to be telling my wife about it. You know what? And Sal took the risk, and we should do it, you know?
Yeah, there you go, man. It's all good. It's all good. You have to kind of you bet on yourself, you take risks. And, you know, I think if you have faith in what you're doing, you have confidence in yourself. This is my saying is, Mike, my saying is, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, here's the worst. And how bad is that? So, for example, when we took the risk, I would say to my wife, What's the worst that can happen? The worst is I suck in radio or you can't find a job. And then what happens? Then we go back to Florida and I teach and it's all good. Like,
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. Like
Yep.
that's the worst that can happen, to be honest with you. And that's the way I like to look at it. And you could go really far down that hole and go, well, what's the worst that can happen? But honestly, as long as you have faith in what you're doing and you have confidence in yourself and you have a support system around you like you would with your wife, I think that's what the key is.
Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome words, man. So we'll wrap it up. And first and foremost, I want to give a huge thank you to you taking your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I know you got a lot going on today, and especially getting into OTAs and stuff. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story and giving us all just an inspiring thing to listen to. So secondly, I do want to tell everyone out there, make sure you subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff, right? But if we'll actually give you the details of when this is going to drop and everything, but
Yep.
we have a big promotion that's running out for our podcast too. Is we're doing 100% donation because we have merchandise stores that we've opened and stuff, and we're doing 100% of our profits from a merchandise donation to the local Tampa Bay Heart Walk.
Awesome.
Yes. So that's something that we're kind of advertising at the end of every podcast through the month of June and stuff. So if you ever wanted to get involved, go check out the links in every single one of our socials. Any episode that you look at on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the links are there where you can find the merch stores. Go in, purchase. Like we said, we're doing 100% donation to the Tampa Bay Heart Walk for the month of June. But again, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. It's been incredible. Hopefully one day we can do it again.
You never know. Hey, my mother-in-law still lives in Venice, so we'll stay in touch. And if I'm back down there again, we can hook up and do it in person sometime. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Really great. I'm thankful that, and I appreciate you working around my schedule. I know we were trying to do this for a while, so glad to be on with you today.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. Have a phenomenal day at practice and enjoy the dream job, my man.
All right. You got it, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah.
2 dimes and a token. Do you make roast